So in first video, using examples from India, I talked about how interests of different communities can become a source of problem. A good way of planning for such problems is by having a good constitution in place. Indian constitution is an example of a very well-intentioned document. But unfortunately, it is also partly to blame for the problems that India has faced since its adoption. Now, there are two reasons why I say that. One, there is an internal strife in the Indian constitution. And two, it is a very well-intentioned document, but one that aspires for an ideal India in a real world, which is the biggest problem. Now let me explain these two in detail. What sort of internal strife do I mean? Now, the Constitution of India very rightly aspires that India and Indians would be one people with one destiny. But it also acknowledges that India is a land of diverse people and it wants to protect the culture, promote the cultures. And there was no other way it could have been, because otherwise different people would not have decided to stay together if the constitution had said anything else. So the internal strife arises from two aspects of the constitution itself. One, it wants everybody to be one, and at the same time it wants everybody to have the right to maintain their own distinct identities as well. Doesn't matter how well intentioned everyone is, at some point interests of different communities are going to clash, and this is where the internal strife arises. Now let me explain this using the detailed example of what has gone wrong. Now, growing up in India, when you learn history or geography of India, you learn it of India as a nation. When you're learning the history of Punjab, when you're learning the history of Kashmir, when you're learning the history of Maharashtra or any other state of India, you are learning the history of a state which is a part of India. Even the map that you see in Indian textbooks shows a very big Jammu and Kashmir. But when you see international maps, a lot of that is disputed territory. Most of it part of Pakistan occupied Kashmir and some of it occupied by China. But that's not the point over here. The point is that we learn on history and geography in a particular way. And that education system is designed to promote what the constitution aspires, a one India. But it leads to one very unhealthy outcome, and that is the denial of land rights to the very people who make up India. Think of it, even as late as the British occupation of India, we were still fighting with each other. The unified India that we read about in history and geography, never in the history has such a nation existed. That nation came into being at the time of independence. The only king who had a country which included what is a part of India today was Ashoka. And even his India wasn't the same as India we know today. It was much bigger than this India, in fact. But then if the yardstick is going to be that all the land is a part of India because it was part of Ashoka's empire, then India should be an integral part of Britain, because Britain ruled over India longer than Ashoka might have ruled over that territory. Or even Greeks could have a right in some part of India because some part of India was a part of Alexander's Macedonian. And that's just a starting point of the problem. Even as late as British annexation, we were fighting against each other. There was no one unified Indian community. The Bengalis supported British against Sikhs. The Marathas and Hyderabadis supported British against Mysore. and I think it was Hyderabadis with British against Mysore and so on, against Marathas and something like that, something on those lines. I'm a bit weak with my history, sorry. But anyway, the point is, we were never one people as such. We were always caught up in our own small communities all the time. But the Constitution knew that if Constitution was designed basically to create a one nation, because we were coming together as one nation, and there were good reasons for coming together. And to bring that nation together, to put into action what that Constitution envisioned, we had to design the education system that way. But the problem is, today Indians want to tell Kashmiris that Kashmir is an integral part of India. Indians want to tell Manipuris and Assamese that Manipur and Assam are an integral part of India. They would also want to tell the Sikhs who want independent Sikh nation that Punjab is an integral part of India. Everything has become an integral part of India. Tomorrow you will tell people that if you don't like India, leave India. Now what would that mean? That would mean that by coming together to make this India, their land became a part of India while they lost their rights to their own lands, which is what I call stripping of land rights. And this is an unhealthy result of what has happened. But that's not the point. That's not why we have problem. The problem is not that we have so many different people who have their land rights. The problem is much more fundamental than that. Let me take the example for comparison of the protection granted in the Constitution to the discriminated people of India, the scheduled castes and the backward castes, and compare that to the protections provided to religious minorities. Now, in case of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, the Constitution specifically prohibits people from discriminating on those bases, and it makes an onus on the government to create opportunities to uplift those castes, a positive obligation on the government to uplift those castes. So see how it is working. While people are positively restricted from discriminating against others, government is positively required to uplift those castes. Now let's take the example of religious minorities, what Constitution does in that case. Constitution says that people are free to practice their religion. And there's a negative restriction on government that you cannot discriminate on the basis of religion. While people cannot discriminate on the basis of caste, the government cannot discriminate on the basis of religion. While government has to uplift the caste, the people are free to practice their caste, but there is no responsibility on government to uplift their religions. And if the government would have been given the power to uplift the religions, there would have been state interference in religious matters. There would have been problem. So you see, there is not enough protection for religions when you compare it with scheduled people, protection for people from scheduled castes and backward castes. That difference becomes, that difference as itself in comparison is not something which makes any difference, because there are scheduled castes and backward castes in every religion in India. But the problem is, it just highlights the disadvantage that religious minorities have under this Constitution. And then add to that the effect of our education system and our way of thinking is making on how we perceive people's land rights. Think of it. When you don't think Bangladesh has to be an integral part of India, you don't think of Pakistan as being an integral part of India, because they are others. They are always the others. When we read our history, we read about them as others, and we always think that they are others. We don't stake claim to their lands. But for everybody who is in India, we believe that land belongs to us as India as a nation. And if those who don't like India, they should leave India. It basically leads to stripping of land rights. Now the other problem is the federal structure that Constitution envisages. It actually highlights this problem further. What it does is it takes away the control of the people from the actual states to the center. Federation or federal system is not a system I recommend for India. I'll talk more about it in the third video when I'll provide the solution. But federal structure is not meant for a society like India, which is made up of so many different communities. India is not like United States or Australia. When you think of United States or Australia, they are also very diverse countries. There's black race, there's white race, and there's indigenous race. And then of course there are people of other nationalities as well. But when you think of their different states, they were made up of similar mix of population. There were white people from similar backgrounds in every state. There were black people from similar backgrounds in every state. There were indigenous people of similar heritage in every state. So it was the same mix in every state. So they could have come together. They were not fundamental differences at the level of states. Same is with Australia. But in India, this is different. Sikhs are different than Marathas. Marathas are different than Kashmiris. Kashmiris are different than Manipuris and Assamese. There are fundamental differences. It's not same mix in Kashmir and same mix in Maharashtra and same mix in Punjab and same mix in Assam or Manipur, or same mix in Tamil Nadu as well. I mean, we may have similar religious mix, but they are still different people, which is why federal structure is not a structure recommended for India. It makes people think that they have not only lost right to their own land, but they are actually controlled by someone who has got nothing to do with them. What has New Delhi got to do with people of Assam and Manipur, or of people of Kashmir, or people of Tamil Nadu? So these are some of the flaws which actually become really important for minorities, because when you are a minority, you basically do not have much of a say in a democracy, as I've already said elsewhere in another video. So these are the points that I have identified as the source of problem for India at the moment. And I'll give its fix in the next video. Till that time, think people, think.